So we're absolutely delighted today to be joined by Toby. Toby Talpitz is CEO of Laka. Laka is a startup firm focusing on peer-to-peer bicycle insurance. It's a really interesting model, which is based on a collective of cyclists supporting each other that really looks to tap into the camaraderie often shared by cyclists. So Toby, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
One of the topics we are particularly keen to discuss with you was that of innovation and disruption. And what innovations have you been able to use to be able to ignite disruption?
Ignorance and naivety is probably the tool I used, because when we started out, it wasn't quite clear what we're embarking on, how steep the hill really is. But we came with a very, very simple idea. The idea was insurance in its current form in short tail risk-based propositions benefits one side, the insurance company. Very, very simple example is taking a year's worth of premiums up front. And we just thought, can we not flip this around, turn the sides of the table and pay out claims first and charge our customers retroactively based on the claims that happened rather than those that might happen. And with that, we have built not an actuarial business model, but a credit-based proposition. Again, where Laka pays out first, and at the end of the month, we split the claims across our Laka collective retroactively, plus a small fee for us, and ask them to pay up, please. Which is really, really uncomfortable, because every month we have to send out a bill asking to please, please, please pay up. And with that, we really have to rethink our customer proposition, how we interact with our customers, because if we provide a bad service, they won't pay up. And one thing I'm quite proud and happy about is we have a 99.9% pay up rate over the last close to 3 years since we're live in the market.
So the global coronavirus pandemic has obviously been a massively disruptive event. Have you any thoughts on how the speed and quality of innovation has changed as a result of the pandemic?
I refer to a LinkedIn post I saw a while ago, and there was this poll asking what drove innovation in your company, CEO, Chief Digital Officer, or COVID-19? So clearly, I think it's a wake-up call for many, embracing technical solutions, starting obviously with the beloved video conferencing tools, which I'm sure many of us have a fatigue now of. But nonetheless, I think at the very least, it triggers forcefully a way of rethinking, right? And that could be very, very deep or scratching the surface. Frankly speaking, we were a beneficiary of it because we fully focus on the mobility segments. So we started out with bike enthusiasts. We have now branched out towards urban mobility, e-mobility. And of course, cycling is hot cake at the moment. Hopefully that table will continue. Infrastructure is getting better. It's a bit of a catch-22. More cycle lanes result in more people cycling. It means more people insuring the bikes. And for us, it's a win, to be honest, with all the disruption that we had along the way as well. So it wasn't all smooth, but I think now it emerges more that cycling is here to stay in a country which, compared to other European countries, probably is still lagging behind.
Is there anything specific about the Laka proposition that has evolved because of what has happened?
As often as a startup, you have many choices, many avenues you can go down. And one path for us would have been focusing on other enthusiast niches, right? For instance, the runners, maybe the surfers and others. That's an avenue we explored quite actively, but with COVID, I think that conversation was off the table immediately because we saw the impact that COVID has on how people use public transport, for instance, and how they just move along in cities and the like. And around that, we have built what we call a Laka Club, which is an initiative to focus on cycling as a whole, mobility as a whole. And I keep joking a bit, we are building the AA for cycling to really build a support network to support that movement.
So I remember when we talked before as well, one of the things you're starting to do in the consumer proposition was almost go above and beyond what people expect, right? So I think you used to be like sending out care packs to people who had been in accidents and stuff like that in a way they didn't expect.
We have several things we're experimenting with, frankly, and some of them were staying with us. So if you have an accident, you break your collarbone, sadly, we would send you a turbo train, a stationary bike to your doorstep on loan.
Nice.
That led us to building out a new product that is called Recovery in Health. Because when you have an accident, the A&E will put you back together, the hospital, but then you leave the hospital and the question was often what's next. On the recovery side, and we would give you access to a network of physicians, of cycling coaches, of mental well-being experts after an accident with a third party of a car. So all these things to get you back on the bike sooner. And I think that's going quite well, including a small recovery pack. The little touch points that are so powerful.
So cycling and sustainability have, I think, quite a close connection with each other. And I think the crisis has caused obviously some massive changes in people's individual lives and wider consumer behaviour. As a firm focused on cycling, what impact has this had on your business? And do you see longer term shifts in how businesses and people think about sustainability?
We are focusing firmly on a net zero carbon-free emission play. So sustainable alternative forms of transport. You wouldn't see a Laka car insurance product. And we want to fuel that movement, that trend around e-bike is a very big thing. It just expands your reach significantly. So yes, fueling that trend around getting more people on the bike is quite powerful.
One of the things that you've been doing, Toby, is to think about how you can take your model abroad. And most recently, you've looked to launch in the Netherlands, which obviously, is a well-established cycling market. How difficult have you found it, however, to establish an international business, especially at this time?
We deliberately thought about going either wide in the market and now launch 10 different products in the UK, or use the proposition that works, where we know the customer base, understand their needs and requirements, and bring this to Europe. Very, very roughly, there are roughly 10 million potential customers for us in the UK, which is quite a nice market. If you add up enthusiasts, urban mobility, e-mobility, there are 100 million plus people in Europe. So for us, it's clearly about expanding the addressable market, catering and serving those customers. In a post-Brexit world where we sadly lose passporting rights very soon, we deliberately set out to build up a European headquarter, which we have done so in Amsterdam. We spoke to many regulators in the European market, and there was just a great combination of openness of the regulator, but also local market size. And the Netherlands, the motherland of cycling, of course, is absolutely key for us.
Now, obviously, also international expansion comes with a reasonable cost. How difficult are you finding it in the current circumstances to be able to get capital to fund these new ventures?
So we've been quite fortunate. We've closed a seed round only in January this year. And with that, we made a deliberate decision that international expansion is part of our proposition. And as such, we had the tools and the means for it. To be honest, there were a lot of black swan scenarios that funding markets shut down entirely, but the worst case doomsday scenarios didn't come true. There was a lot of engagement. It seemed like VCs raising new funds left and right. Interest remained, which is good. There are so many opportunities out there for partnerships to double down on marketing initiatives and the likes, building out the team, preparing to enter new countries, that we decided to make crowdfunding a big part of our way forward. We are backed by our existing customers, so I think it's really important that you can show support from your previous investors, which we're happy that works out. And you will see very soon Laka going live on Cedars. And again, I don't think the funding market is shut. I guess creativity is more needed than ever.
And thinking about leading a startup, we've had conversations with a number of leaders and businesses about how they've had to deal with disruption in their environments. Have you found you've had to adapt your leadership style in this situation, and what's worked and what hasn't?
We do all the right things. I believe we offered a budget to our team to fit out their home offices. The winner was noise cancelling headphones, by the way, over chairs and other things. There was clearly the shift from offline being online. How do you keep the team engaged? I think during the Verso days of the first wave, we had pub quizzes, we had team lunches, we had breakfasts and the likes, all virtually over Zoom and the likes. Beginning, people were just craving a social interaction. Towards the end, it faded a little bit. I think it's all about being transparent, sharing with what's going on in the company. We have a weekly all hands where we kind of split out, share quite in detail what we are doing, why we are doing it, and how we are progressing. So accountability is quite important, and being upfront.